Hey everybody, and welcome to the Infinite Creative Podcast. My name is Sean. My amigo over here is...
Fitz. Hey.
Hey, what up, man? So, welcome to our podcast. We talk about all the creative goodness in the world and the not goodness, the scary AI, and the good creative skills that you can be learning in kind of our own journey. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the kind of crazy acquisitional corporate world that exists in the creative tools, and all of the tools seem to be being bought by these big monopoly type of behemoths. Is that good? Is that bad? And from there we're going to go ahead and lead this right into a very interesting talk about risk management. And how does that really affect a creative? And Fitz is going to kind of walk us through, should we be focusing on risk or should we not be focusing on risk?
So on that note, I also want to say we're kind of like opposites, the very controlled, and then there's the uncontrolled ADHD. And so there's like two worlds clashing. So I will actually ask him a couple things and talk about a couple things, and we get his spin on it and we get my spin on it. But I think let's jump right into Adobe.
Yeah, and just very quickly for all of you out there, make sure to like and subscribe. We will appreciate it. Please keep sending comments. We love the engagement, so please keep being involved. We love this. So the other day on the news, a lot of people in the kind of web design world probably saw this news that Figma, I would say, if not the top, one of the top website UI, UX tools out there where you can... it's kind of a visual first kind of website builder, UI builder, where you can kind of build websites, apps, and stuff kind of digitally. And it's an amazing app. I mean, I started using Figma about 2 years ago, and ever since I haven't really looked back. It's just, it does things sometimes better than the Adobe products does. It does things better than a lot of the other creative products, and it's just awesome. It's created such a cool ecosystem. So of course, with that being said, a big, huge piranha, big, huge fish in the pond called Adobe, came in and bought it for $20 billion. Just this
pocket
last
change.
Week. Yeah. Pocket change. And what's really interesting about this, what caught my eye about it is, I as a designer am very big in the Adobe ecosystem. I'm constantly using Adobe tools. I'm constantly using my Illustrator, my Photoshop. I'm constantly using Premiere, After Effects. I'm always in that ecosystem. And one of the few times I jump out of that ecosystem is to use Figma because, Adobe has Adobe XD, so that's their kind of website builder, and it's just not good compared to Figma. I mean, it's like the diet version of Figma.
So how do you feel about that, though? Because, you have all those apps, just like a bazillion. You open the Adobe cloud, and there's, 20 programs that you can download. And I'm like, it's already confusing, and they're all, having those weird names and just Audition, Premiere Pro, blah, blah, blah. And there's so many of them. Yeah. And now it will be more. There will be another button, maybe, and it's called Figma. I'm like, what?
Exactly. And what's interesting, like I said, the Adobe already has their Figma. So what I actually view this as is, Figma's better competition. Let's get rid of the competition and let's take some of their features and boil it into Adobe XD. So I think Figma's probably going to disappear, I would say. But you brought up some of these apps. Let me share my screen here real quickly.
On that note too, Facebook did the same thing. They acquired Instagram, and they basically were trying to hinder the growth from Instagram, and basically okay, you're not allowed to hire more employees. So Instagram got hold at a limit, and Facebook was expanding. So Facebook was intentionally limiting the growth of the competing company that they bought. They have no reason to not let Instagram outgrow us. And so Instagram is what it is right now because of Facebook. So it could have been way better.
Yeah, exactly. And anyone that's been deep in the corporate world will know that that's definitely one of the biggest types of corporate arbitrage that you do, is that you essentially acquire your competitors, or you acquire people that are on the way up that may be a future competitor. I mean, even my first internship, out of college, one of our big projects that we had to do, that we actually had to present to the CEO, was we had to research who were good companies to acquire. and who should we be taking down? And I even researched a couple design agencies that they actually did end up acquiring that were in different areas. I was like, hey, they're coming up, and they're going to start pushing us out in these areas. So, you know, right now you could get them for a pretty penny, so you might as well buy them just so they're not your competition. So a lot of that happens too.
Yeah.
But quickly to talk about kind of this infograph. So this kind of shows where some of our apps come from. And there's a couple missing things here because this starts in about 2005. But I want to predate this a little bit. So in 1995, guess what awesome company Adobe bought? That's one of their biggest products today.
I don't know. I have an idea, but I'm no, it's not the PDF thing. I'm so bad with names. Just go ahead.
Photoshop. Photoshop was not an Adobe creation. A lot of people would be very surprised. Photoshop was its own company of people. But you know, so a lot of their core things were even bought. So on this graph here, you can see a couple of these companies. Macromedia. So what did Macromedia do? Well, they created Dreamweaver, and they also created a lot of the Flash, the stuff that we know today for Flash editing. So they did that. Omniture, EcoSign, these are all just like little things. EcoSign is like a way for you to sign PDFs. Now that's Adobe Signature. Behance, we all know Behance as a social community for creativity. A lot of these, so Photolea, for example, to call them out, that's now Adobe Stock Photo. That was a stock photo site that they essentially bought, so that's where Adobe Stock came from. Magento, that's a marketing platform, so that's Adobe getting into the marketing platform world as well as Marketo. Workfront, that's a project management tool. They were one of the biggest ones. Bought them. Now Adobe's moving into the project management. Frame.io still exists to some degree, but it's big in the video world. It's like a way to collaborate on different videos online. It's a cool tool to use as well. It still exists, but Adobe also acquired them as well. And now Figma. And so go ahead.
I'm a little bit confused about the whole thing. So, like I said, like Facebook, for example, did the like handicapping Instagram and taking their technology, implementing it, and still monetizing like their tools and technology. And that's what Adobe kind of does too. So they could choose to like enhance those companies, giving them funding, giving them more like technology, or take the patents, take all those stuff, you know, and put it in their own product. So what they going to do with that, because it seems like they have their own tool set that they grow and then buying all those other companies but don't really enhance them, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a way to grab features, probably grab cool people on the team and bring them into the Adobe universe. There's also, you know, that's something to remember, is that there's big team players in these worlds too that are probably really cool, so that's how they grab those people. Yeah, I mean, they're going to take the features from Figma, which Figma just does things in really cool ways that Adobe just hasn't done. So it would be cool to see some of the Figma kind of shortcuts kind of find their way into other apps as well. Figma also does a really good job in collaboration. That's one of the things that they recently revealed was this thing called Figma Jam, where you and I could actually design a website together remotely.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
A little bit coding.
Yeah, no coding.
On that note, though, what is the Figma competition from Adobe? Or what was the Adobe equivalent?
So Adobe had Adobe XD, and Adobe XD, you know, while being a decent web builder, just very limited on so many things, like things like even interactions, like motion and animation, things like that. It just didn't work well with.
So my question is now, they use that thing that kind of does not really work. Buying Figma, putting all the Figma tools, or some of them, into this non-really working thing, it just becomes a convoluted mess, and it maybe gets better, but it's still kind of a mess that doesn't run efficiently. And Figma is getting handicapped. Will be there then the third competition coming up and just being better? What is your prediction how this will turn out? Will they put features into the weirdly working thing, or will they just like let Figma do its thing and outgrow their own thing? Well, what is your prediction?
It's very interesting, right? Because they know, Adobe probably knows that if they go too hard too fast, they'll scare all us Figma people away. We're all going to get mad and we're going to jump off ship. So what usually happens that you're probably going to see in this case is Figma and Adobe XD will keep living side by side for maybe a year, maybe 2 years. So they'll keep Figma going. It's not like they're going to kick all of us Figma people out and just delete the app. However, as they both kind of live side by side, what's going to happen is eventually they're going to have, a Figma by Adobe, or they're going to do like all these kind of like weird integration-y things. And then probably, in 2-3 years, there'll be no more Figma. It'll be called like Adobe, and they may get rid of XD, or they may just still call it, or they may call it like Adobe Figma or Adobe Fig or something. I don't know. But yeah, eventually they'll kill off Figma. I don't see any reason to keep both Adobe XD and Figma going. I mean, it'd be kind of cool if they killed off XD, because it was cool when it first came out. I remember when Adobe XD was first premiered, it was like, because there just wasn't that many tools. But now we're like, now we're 5-10 years later. It's a whole different universe already. If you want to talk about competitors now, like, you do have other competitors, other website builders that are out there. Like, you do have Sketch. Sketch is probably now the only one that can really compete, but Sketch is not as great as Figma either. I feel like Figma was like kind of the top of the top, the cream of the crop. So they took out the number one now, and so we'll see. I think it's going to be Adobe's the number one, maybe Sketch is the only other number two. But yeah, very interesting. I think it's going to hurt the app if you want my honest opinion.
I think it will hurt both apps if you think about it. Like, they're trying to make it worthwhile for both, instead of like each company is just like, let's go 100%, grow full force, whatever we can do. Now it's just like, how do we make this useful for us, And they obviously want to keep their paycheck, so it's not really beneficial if that company outgrows them and we're just adapting them. So all the CEOs are like, yeah, we have to absorb them and become the better version, but that will change the whole company, and then nothing is really, turning into a conglomerate one-piece thing.
Yeah, and this is nothing new in this development world. This happens all the time that companies have been acquired since the beginning of the internet, even. But I think with that being said, though, I think the magic does die every time you do these kind of acquisitions. Where you get this thing where you're this tiny startup, but when Figma was probably the small team and they built it up into this huge thing. I mean, that gives a lot of passion, but then to just get bought by your competitor, it just kind of takes out that flame. So with that being said, I do kind of want to like ask you. I mean, so with Adobe really taking control of more and more of my apps, even so, my world may fully be Adobe. Even
how do you feel about Adobe? So that is my question, because like I'm like the back in the day, Adobe was like, you pay for it, you get it. Now it's like you rent your software. What is nice if you're on a budget and just like, oh, I need some tools for this month. If you're really on a budget, it's really easy to shell out $20 for Premiere Pro and you start editing your first gig, for example. But if you do it long term, it's really annoying. What is your opinion about that?
Well, there's a very interesting direction that the entire economy, the world economy, is moving, where you don't own anything. Recently, at like the global economic about 6 months ago, 7-8 months ago, the leader, kind of his whole thing was like, in the future you will own nothing and you will love it. And a lot of people kind of like were kind of pushed back by that, like, well, I'll own nothing and I'm going to love it. And I think that's what Adobe's tried to do. So there's good things about us not owning the software anymore, where it's constantly being updated. It does all link together very smoothly now. And it all lives in one place now, where before, I used to have to buy my Illustrator disc that was somewhere in there. And if I had to reload Illustrator, I'd have to go digging through my stuff, and a Photoshop disc over here. But it was awesome because I owned it back then. I definitely, when it first started, when they first went to Creative Cloud, I was not a fan, man. I was against it vehemently. I thought it was such a stupid power play, and that it has become more expensive, right? Like I used to pay
it's
$500
now.
Yeah, I used to pay like $300-$500 for one of the apps, but then then I owned it. Where like now it's like in 1 year I pay that for one app. So.
Yeah,
so so for me, so I guess like while I'm a fan of everything getting put in one tool set, I'm not against that, because I do like, Adobe's done great with their libraries too, where like, having Figma connected to my Adobe library is pretty cool, where I could drag stuff. It's literally just dragging out of a library onto the artboard, and that's kind of cool. I do love that. Apple's done the same thing, right? With AirDrop and stuff. Like, well, if we make it a little easier to work in the ecosystem, then we can trap you in the ecosystem. And that's kind of what Adobe's done to a degree, of like, if we make the ecosystem really easy, the second you get out of that ecosystem, we're going to penalize you.
Yeah, so with that thing what you just said, like everything is becoming like nobody's an owner, everybody's just renting. That is like tremendously nice till you get excluded, or banned. Like there's like occasions, like if you have a YouTube channel, for example, you're uploading to YouTube, it's run by bots. So sometimes your stuff gets flagged and it's like, oh, you were doing this and that, and they will not really tell you why you get banned. But if you get banned from Google, you don't know how bad your life will be. There's like bank accounts, Facebooks and whatever, email addresses, that is all interconnected, and it becomes really hard to basically become an identity on the internet without the main players like Apple, Google. You need to be at least in each of them or one of them to be even like part of the society nowadays. And now imagine being excluded, and like renting your apps and everything is nice as long as it's like not a completely monopoly. Like if Adobe would own everything, they could raise the price till it's like too toxic, but there's no way out of it because you have to be part of it, So that's like the goal, and that's the problem with it, I think.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, you bring up a great example with Google. They've done such a good job with the login using Google, where even I'm so locked into that, and because they figured out like, oh yeah, passwords are a pain in the butt. Like people, no matter how good you are with passwords, you're having problems with passwords on something. So why don't we make that easy? And it works. I use it, and I'm in their ecosystem because because who wants to use 1Password or one of these third-party things?
No, everybody wants to do that, but we can't because, like, if 1Password is getting leaked, you kind of screwed. That's the problem, So that's the Achilles. We are all bad with passwords. There's no way that we come up with 150 characters that are really unique and we just type them quickly in. No, and each website a different one. That ain't working. So
yeah, and so Google just, they've just perfected their two-factor authentication system, things like that, where they're just like, hey, let's just have a button and let's just have every website be able to put this button. And I use it all the time now. And so it's that ease of use. It's interesting where the easier it gets, the more entrapped it feels like we become. And so I mean, with your tools in the video world, do you see this, or do you still see it kind of being very separate? Are you using multiple different companies?
So I have like free editing softwares that I use. Like I use Adobe, I use Final Cut, and I use Vinci Resolve. I'm like in each of them like very experienced, like in the medium, I would say. Some of them more advanced, like Adobe, for example. But if you switch sites, they don't really work really well together. But if you use Adobe's thing and then you go into After Effects, so it's a good transition because you can just export into that thing and then work from there. But different softwares, for example, like Vinci Resolve has like After Effects built in. So you're better off buying Vinci Resolve, runs more efficient if you buy the full version because then you get the CPU acceleration and stuff like that. And you have it built in, but it costs $2.99, and most people don't do the jump. It's easier to just pay $20 a month, getting the Premiere Pro, and then spend another couple bucks for the add-on, and it's like $30 a month then, and you get both of them. But if you would just spend the extra money, you will get one piece of software that can do everything. But it's like, a completely different concept, and they are like clashing kind of.
Yeah, so I mean, so would you say that the DaVinci Resolve, do you think that that's a better software then, would you say?
Yeah, it's more organized, it's more efficient. So the problem is DaVinci Resolve is free, what is great. So they basically get everybody like started for free, and it's like a color grading software that evolved into a really powerful editing software with a lot of tools. And now they added like the next tool, like the After Effects, what is completely different than Adobe's version because they are like very node based, so you have to connect nodes and build basically a node tree where Premiere like After Effects is like a little bit different. It's more layers and stuff like that, and overall it's not that efficient and it's not as smooth as DaVinci Resolve because like they have Fusion, that's how they call it, but it's just a tab in the editing software. So you go into the next tab, then you can do some After Effects stuff in DaVinci Resolve. Then you go to the next tab, you do some color grading. Then you go to the next tab and you hit export. And now
Okay.
what Adobe did is like, oh, let's copy that, and it's not really that good because it's just like they had like their work process that was very customizable. So it's like windows, so you can have different windows, you can arrange them and do stuff, and you have color grading in multiple windows and multiple ways to do it. But there was not like a clear 1, 2, 3, 4 path, you know. Not, it was all over the place, and now they force it on you, and it's just like feels convoluted.
Huh. So which one's the easier to use, do you think? Do you think the DaVinci is the easier to use, or do you think it's more complicated for more kind of experienced users?
I think like no matter so they're not very intuitive like most of them. Like DaVinci is like kind of easy to use in the beginning. Adobe has more features. If you just like, it's easier to learn because more people adapted it, and there's more tutorials. Final Cut is also on the same level, so it's like it's really iffy. But after you have like spent like some time in it, like I would say after you spend like a month or two in the software, I think DaVinci would be the better tool. But the problem is like, yeah, the user base. The more user base you have, the more tutorials, the more assets you get, the more features, and yeah, it's a little bit of a hype train you have to adapt to.
So, yeah, I mean, well, because what I was kind of getting to with that, too, is like one thing I have noticed that Adobe is trying to do is they're trying to make everything easier. They're trying to make it like the ability to do things to get easier. Like when I grew up as a designer, After Effects was actually pretty similar to what it is today, but just very complicated. So many windows, so much verbiage that's not used in other apps that it's only used in After Effects. All these like different weird ways,
especially combinations on the keyboards and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I'm noticing, especially, and I actually want to talk about this a little bit too, is that they're definitely starting to see Canva. They're starting to see these other softwares that are like, they're all about easy, 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 easy. How do we make this as easy as possible for someone who has no experience with these tools to come in and start creating stuff? And Adobe has now really recently released Adobe Express, and that's their answer of like, hey, here's all these... Yeah, here's all these templated things. Here's access to the Adobe stock photo library, which is actually Photolia from which I told you they acquired back in 2015. And so it's like, so they're trying to do the same thing. So I think that's where it's kind of interesting, right? Is like, jumping out of the Adobe world is possible, and the software may be better than Adobe, but where Adobe's trying to kill everyone else is like, yeah, but are you going to spend all that time to learn the DaVinci software that's harder to use? Or, hey, come over here. We got this easy templated thing. You can even use After Effects templates right in. Just plop it in. And so I think, because that's one thing, too, I have noticed, speaking of After Effects, is that they've recently started to invite really well-known animation people and cinematography people to actually create their own kind of actions and automatic effects in After Effects. So now they're actually, and this is just recent, just this month, they've started to release new kind of templated filters and things you can. So this one really well-known cinematographer animation guy, he actually released a library, and this is on After Effects. So this isn't like you have to go buy this.
He just released it? He got paid for it?
Yeah, he got paid by Adobe, and it's very simple stuff, but it's like it's all the stuff that you would have to go. You'd have to go out and buy, like, so like your slide in text or like your double split text and it's all very professional, but now it's in the app. Now, like, they're like, why do you need to go? You don't need to go buy these templates. Like, we just have it in the app now. Yeah. So
that is also really interesting because like there's like a how do you say a stigma to it, like let's say you use the stock version of the software. Everybody who uses the software knows that you use the stock version, and they're like judging you. But on the one side, is it actually bad if it's good? You know what I mean? So obviously you still have the bias of like you being the professional knowing like this is the stock version, and the client no idea. He maybe even wants that stuff. So it's
that's exactly it. Is the people in the community may think you use stock, but they're not the ones paying your bills. So that's the argument there. Is as long as your clients don't, and your clients don't necessarily care if you use stock. I think if you talk to an actual business person, if we had Gary V on here, he would just be like, I don't care if it takes you 2 seconds to do something. Does it look cool? Do you deliver on time? That's all I care about.
Just fucking do it.
Just fucking do it. But I mean, like, so I think So yeah, so I don't think your clients really care, and I think for me, I've had a hard time with that, where I've had to learn the hard way to do everything. Like, God, I remember when like you would have someone with like crazy hair, and I would try to be like going in there with like the paintbrush tool to just try to get every little thing of the hair to go in the, and now you have like, you know, select subject.
Tool.
Yeah, select subject, and it does better than I ever did in like 1 second. So it's like. Yeah. So for me, I do find myself getting like, well, I had to learn that, and I remember I had to walk 10,000 miles in the snow every day, you know. But yeah,
we basically have to learn to swallow our ego, what is weird, you know, because we took pride in the skills that we learned, you know. And I was like, everybody can do it, and it's super weird because I still don't know how to deal with this, you know, because everybody's a videographer nowadays, and everybody's doing this and that, you know, and it's just like everything. Oh yeah, go to Squarespace, you get a website in 5 minutes. Actually, it looks decent if you get the right nice template, you know. Just upload some photos, and you're good, you know, depending on whatever and however you do it. Like my Squarespace website, I ain't cutting it.
Yeah, well, and there's still these different levels that you can tell. I mean, could you go to Squarespace, whip something up that looks good? Sure, but can you whip something up that looks great? Probably not. I mean, probably not.
I actually have now like a concept. So it seems like people with the best how do you say that, flavor or like self-branding or whatever they find attractive, with the best, how do you call it again? I forgot the word. Like
aesthetic flavor? Or
yeah, with the best aesthetic and the best way to describe their style. They basically have the best outcome out of all those scenarios that are coming up right now, because like, oh, you have a good style and you just choose good styles. AI is great. You just describe something, and the way you like it, you will get a good outcome. But the person who has like a bad style and has no taste basically is like struggling, you know, and basically they get punished. But everybody who has like a great taste with the great equalizer gets everything how they want it, and it will look amazing, you know.
Right. Well, and there's two different types of creatives out there, and I feel like I'm the second one in this. But the first type of creator is someone that, yeah, they only do their style. People come to them. Like if I want flat geometric, I go to that guy that does it. If I want, you know, very very photographic motion, I'll go to this guy. But like, but I'm actually the second type of creative, I feel like, who you adapt based on the client's needs.
Yeah.
So if this one client needs fun, goofy cartoons, I can do that. If this guy needs serious cutting edge lens flare stuff, then I can do that. I think there's those two different types of creatives, right?
But one of them is not benefiting from those tools because, like, obviously, I have a friend who is a really good photographer and has a very distinct style. I adore his style. Technically, he's not really like the technical, you know. So, I'm like, if I would have your style, I could like replace you now with that AI thing. But you could use this AI thing and just keep that style going, you know, and make it like even more how you imagine it. Where I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do. Because I'm like the same person like you. I'm just like, I want to do what the client needs versus like what I want. And my personal style is like very weird. You know, it's not like designed.
Yeah, well, and I mean, and maybe that's something that you need to work on a little bit. I mean, I definitely think that we all should have our own fingerprints, that kind of, and I think they should show up automatically. You may feel like you don't have a style, but I'm sure if Clearly, but if I showed like 5 of your videos to someone that doesn't know you, I'm sure they could kind of come up with like some like, yeah, I can see that this is the same guy. Like it's interesting because like you may even try to be completely different, but there's always like some connective stuff that you'll see. Even in my stuff, you'll see I do some different, but you'll kind of see like, oh, there is something here that makes it seem like it's from him. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so like I feel like it just depends. Like, I think you can do both very well. I think you could be very focused in like your one thing, or you could be the person that just tries to be something for everyone, but you just have to be very honest with yourself then. So if you are this guy that wants to do things for the client, then you need to like then market yourself as higher than the tools, like, which I've talked about in past episodes, is like don't define yourself based on the tool of just being like, well, what's your vision? Are you about storytelling? Are you about getting something quality fast? Are you about changing the world? Like, get to these kind of bigger ideas. But if you are the guy that's like, hey, I just do this one style, then you need to like market yourself as a tool in a way, right? Because you know that you're the geometric style guy, so then you need to market yourself like Adobe would market themselves as a company that's a tool would market themselves. And that's where things like your Upwork, your Fiverr, yes, those are places you can put yourself where you're it forces you to be like, I do this one thing, pay me. But also on your website, also on other things, where if you're only going to be that one guy, then you need to go full lean in. Don't be the geometric guy, but then have this one photo video thing on your website. No, get rid of that. It needs to all be the same thing then.
Yeah, but I think like those people will benefit like the most right now out of that, because like they have a very distinct style, and the tools are becoming easier and easier, and they're just like, yeah, I want this style as a website, I want this style as a portrait photo, I want to have this style as a preset as a lot for my videos, and it's like, oh, everything is becoming easier and easier, and the people who benefit the most from that will people who have a very clear, distinct style and mission or vision in general, and they will be like able to use all those tools in a very clear way, where everybody else who's not really clearly in that niche or has a clear vision will struggle a bit more in this new area.
Yes,
you know what
no.
I mean?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I mean, when you say style, we might as well be saying trend, and we all know what happens with trends, right? So that's my thing too. Is if you're like, yeah, I do this very postmodern minimalist style, that's not going to go away, but that may get out of popularity at some point. So you may then have to be okay with the lulls when nobody cares about your style anymore, and it may come back. Like, disco came back, but like you may then have to wait 20 years for the style to come back. So that's where I would rather be the guy that's like, no, I'm always going to be a creative, even when we're doing flat geometry, if we're doing photos, if we're not even doing any visuals anymore, we're just doing typography. That's where it's like, I would rather be that guy. So like when the ice age comes, I can still go out and hunt as good as it is here in the middle of the summer. I don't want to. So I don't know. It just depends. I think like both are pros and cons. And I think, with the tools, to get back kind of the tools and does them becoming one big thing help us or hurt us? I think in the long run, I think it hurts us personally. I think it doesn't allow for more creativity. It doesn't allow for more crazy ideas to happen. It just essentially because I don't think Adobe's going to take over Figma and then Figma is going to keep getting better and better. I don't believe that. I don't think anyone believes that. Like when they took over Photoshop, I don't think Photoshop's really changed since then, since 1995 really. Yeah, they've added little things here and there, but it's still filters. It's still a raster thing. It's still just like Illustrator, which used to be owned by someone else too, I believe. And PDFs, those are still pretty much the same since vectors were created in the 80s. So I don't think Adobe's going to go in and like really improve anything. I think it's bad in a way. I think it's just the corporate world kind of messing up our world. Now it brings everything together, which is cool. It gives me one kind of drawer with all my tools, but I think it's better to have some of these other tools that are outside of that ecosystem. Keeping them honest.
True. Yeah, well, I think this is now time where we jump ship to the second topic, and that is risk management. Because like obviously it was a risk for Adobe to buy Figma, but it's also like their way of risk management. So that was like the reason how I wanted to transition with a segue, but the segue got a little bit convoluted because we got lost in the sauce. But yeah, the risk management is like very important. I think like even as a small creator or as a big creative company. So let's share the screen, I think, so that we're having some infographics. Oh, there's a nice website. Look at that. So currently, Rachel, my wife, is going through a class for risk management. And I think like the whole concept is kind of weird, because on the one side, obviously, you want to identify the risk, analyze the risk, and then evaluate the rank of the risk, and then treat the risk and monitor and review the risk. But in the end, I see it as like, okay, you're a child, you're very... you enjoy risk and you go out there, you learn, and the older you get, the more you learn what risk means, and you become stubborn, less flexible, and you're just becoming like a person that is like, okay, risk averse, and you do what you know works. But also has the side effect of like you're stuck in your way and you're not pivoting as fast as other people would do that are younger than you. And you kind of can translate that to startups. Startups, they're just like, oh yeah, we take all this risk on. We don't know if this will work out, but we just like make it work. And then there's the big companies, like the old people, and they're just like, okay, we kind of have to manage our risk. So where do you fall in right now? How would you describe yourself? Because like I'm trying to be a kid where it's like I want to take a lot of risks on and just like stay young and flexible, where other people are like kind of like stuck in their way and they know what works.
I think it's layers of gray, right? I think we're all, we all have our risk adversities that we have when we all take risks in different ways. I think what's interesting about the risk management process is the word management, right? So it's not saying don't totally ignore risk or totally be consumed by risk. It's just saying manage it. So it's just like anxiety, right? Like anxiety is not a bad thing necessarily. It saves you when the cheetah is coming at you, or you go down a dark alley and you see a mysterious figure. That's when anxiety is helping you. But can anxiety also consume you and keep you locked in your bedroom? Yeah. So I think the same thing is here with risk, where where am I in the process? Everywhere. I think everyone should be. I mean, when I take on a new project, I think what's cool about the risk management process is every new project you should quickly run through these steps, right? Evaluate the risk. See if there's anything weird with this client. Treat that risk. If there is something weird, how do we get past this? After we do that, monitor it. Did that actually work? Identify if there's more risks, analyze if any of this is working, and then evaluate again. So I think it's like, now should you be consumed by that? No, but should you maybe be thinking about that? We've talked about your gut feeling last episode. And that's risk management in a way, right? That's you evaluating the risk, is that gut feeling.
But that's also the old guy getting older and like getting more experience, because sometimes maybe that one weird client could be, the introduction to something else, That is like, it's a weird concept where it's like on the one side you want to manage your risk, but on the other side, like if you do, you say no to opportunities, what is a very interesting thing. But also what I find interesting about risk management is like you can apply it to anything and everything, be it like strategy, insurance, branding. Because like on the one side, like my problem is like I don't focus enough on branding because like I just want to do what is best for my clients. So I'm personally not really seeing myself like, oh, this is me with a very clear style that I force onto the world. I'm like, okay, I want to see your problem and I want to figure out what I can do for you and come up with creative solutions, Mm-hmm. But on the other side, that has the risk of like, oh, he does not have a brand, style, or whatever, And obviously, the more I would develop a brand with a distinct style, the more clients I would get in that direction. But it is like you can apply this risk management process onto everything, and it's kind of it is a weird conundrum because the more you lean into managing your risks, the clearer and structured you become, and then that is risky in itself.
I mean, is it though? I mean, is it really risky to be clear and structured? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think if you're scared to say no to everything, then sure. If you have to say yes to every possibility that walks across your path, then risk management sucks. But if you want to say bad to the things that are going to ultimately waste your time, then I think risk management's a good thing. I think a lot of creatives, including myself to this day, are still stuck in this place of like, say yes to everything. And if you say no, then you deserve to not have anything. And it's like, no, you should be able to say no. You should actually get a good opportunity. But if you see the risks, if you see that this will drive you into the ground, then say no, and be proud of saying no to a possibility. And then I would even push back that like, your style is already there. You said it at the very beginning, your branding is right there. I just want to help clients get their solutions. That's a branding right there. I mean, I think some people get so caught up in their own selfish style. Like I'm this sleek artist and it's like, no, you're not. You are a tool. Sorry, you're a tool. Like you get paid by someone to do something. If you want to go be Van Gogh or go be some guy with his own style, then go be an artist. Like you're not an artist. You are a tool. You are a tool set. I hate to say it. So I think your branding is that. You said it in the first sentence. I just want to help my clients. Then that's your branding. Like it doesn't. Who cares if you can make shapes? Who cares if you can use this software to do something different? Like no one really cares because you're not an artist. You're a tool.
True. And this is how everything falls apart with his like clear, analyzed styles. Yeah. But for example, like there's like I wanted to be like the reputation risk, for example. I wanted to talk about like Chick-fil-A, for example, where basically like they clearly don't really support the LGBT community, and that is what their reputation kind of is. Like they force their way onto their customers, and it's like if you agree or not, it's the risk is evaluated, kind of sort of. You would assume they would like, okay, like some of them will not like us and will not buy from us ever, but some of them will do. And it's like it's a really weird thing to do, like with reputation, and you can use it in so many ways. But yeah, you have to evaluate it, and yeah, that was one of the.
Well, yeah, I mean, to use your example, and that's not very risky at all, is it? I mean, 63% of the U.S. population is Christian.
Yeah.
210 million people are Christian. So that means the majority of the U.S. is going to see, oh, they're closed on Sunday. Oh, that's so great. I'm going to go there. Like, who cares about Cane's? I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A because they're respectful of the Lord or Jesus Christ. And that's 63% of the U.S. So really, that was them using risk management and being like, oh, yeah, why don't we appeal to, like, why don't we appeal to most of the U.S.?
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. If they would not say that at all, they could have had maybe 100% of the U.S., but because they appeal to the niche of the 60%, that is more than maybe 100. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but if you appeal to everyone, then you win nobody over. It's one of those things. If you have a it's. I remember when I have a friend who he used to flip apartments, and he used to ask him, why are all apartments' walls painted white? Every apartment you ever move into, all the walls are painted white, and he's like, because everyone hates white the same. And it's an interesting point because it levels the playing field, and where it's like, yeah, but if you have these like, a blue, you paint all the walls this blue color, yeah, some people are going to walk in and be like, yeah, I hate blue, I hate this apartment. However, some people are going to walk in and be like, I love blue, this is perfect, we have to get this apartment.
So you're basically so here's a interesting concept on that one. So now imagine an apartment complex that markets themselves with blue walls only, and you get only blue walls. Would you say the more you lean into this, the better it will be? Because like you could clearly market to people with blue walls.
I mean, yeah, it would though, wouldn't it? Like if you were looking at stuff and you even go to this apartment's website and it's all blue stuff, the walls are blue, it's doing this like aquamarine theme almost, and it stands out compared to like, the generic like, Brookside communities. Here's a tree. Here's your white apartment. Here's your generic fridge and your generic fluorescent fixtures. You know what I mean? It's like at least you get people excited then, right?
Yeah, on the one side, I'm just now like, okay, should I lean now completely haywires into my strong beliefs, and take that as like, oh yeah, I analyzed the risk. Like apparently, the more I specific with whatever I like, the better it is because people can identify with it, and that should be beneficial. Because like in the beginning, it's like kind of weird. Let's say like you're Christian. You believe in aliens, and you believe in like fitness, and you believe in non-immigrants, kind of sort of. Like I'm going here from an example that is very distinct things that kind of contradicting themselves. You would assume though, because he's like leaning really into like a niche, he would do well, but he's not doing well. So.
Who? Oh, just that person you created?
It's not a creation, actually. It's a real life example.
No, that's a person. You just don't want to shout him out.
Yeah, no. but so that is the thing. Like he clearly branded himself very strongly in very very strong directions. So there should be like people aligning towards that, but they don't.
Well, and maybe the quality just isn't good. See, that's the thing too. Is it's like I've always said this. You can say any joke as long as it's brilliant. As long as you feel like it's witty, you can say anything as long as it's witty. But if it's not witty, you've been there where someone said like a inappropriate joke, but it wasn't really witty, and everyone just goes quiet.
And it feels awkward, yeah.
but you've also been there when someone said something completely inappropriate, and I try to be that guy. It says something so inappropriate, however, it's so funny that everyone just has to laugh, And I think that's almost what I think of here too, is like you can kind of think and do and say anything as long as it's good, right? But if it's not good, then everyone's just gonna be like, no, this isn't. So I mean, in terms of the risk management, to get back to that, I think that's happening all the time. I think that's just being honest about your surroundings, right? It's just like, I think that's why. Have you ever heard of a SWOT analysis? The strength, weakness, opportunity, threats. Something for all of you out there. I mean, a lot of marketing and business people out there know about this, but so look it up, SWOT at some point. If for any of you guys watching, I won't do a deep dive on this now, but it's being honest about like, what are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? A lot of people, they just think of that their strength, right? I'm a good designer. I design this really well. That's my strength. Yeah, sure. But like, what are your weaknesses? What's the opportunities here? Like, I live in Colorado, so if I like to only make mountain logos, then it's like, meh, you're going to be in some tough competition in Colorado. But like, where if you're in Florida and you're like, I only do videography of beaches. Well, good luck, you and everyone else in that whole state. So that's so it's just being honest about the lay of the land. But that's what I like about risk management is, that's why whole corporations have people that only do risk management, because it's their job to be like, hey, you guys are all focused on this, but I'm way back here and you didn't even see this big meteorite that's going to come in and destroy everything you're working on. So,
but that is part of the risk too. Some risk you cannot see and you don't know about it. It's like Adobe acquiring Figma, because they clearly see it as a risk, but they don't know about player number 3, who's building like the best out of all worlds, like from Figma, Adobe, and other tools, combining it to a new thing. So managing risk on the one side, I think, is like impossible, because like you cannot manage risk because you don't know the risk, even though you try to evaluate it. You only can assess the risk that you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's why there's no it's in the name itself. It's management, not risk aversion or risk deletion or risk getting rid of risk. Like, even in the process itself, they're understanding there's no getting rid of the risk. It's just knowing as much as you can. And and of course there's stuff you're going to miss. That's why companies go out of business all the time. They all have risk management people. Why do they go out of business then? Well, there's stuff that the risk management misses too. It's something it's interesting, and it's definitely a skill I feel like even creatives really should have. We should really understand, even in our own processes, things that we do actually can be risky. I do it all the time in projects where I'll find a time sink where I'll do something and it takes forever. It takes way too long. And I instead, at the beginning of the process, I should have looked at this one thing and been like, hey, Sean, this is risky. This little thing here, this thing that you thought was so easy to do, very risky. Yeah, very risky. You're now 3 hours into it. You should have done this in 10 minutes. Now we're 3 hours in. You should have thought about the risk ahead of time. Now you're in the middle of it. You should have thought, like, it happens to me all the time when I'm quoting a project. When I start to estimate on a project now, it used to take me like an hour or two to just whip something up. And now it could take a day or two, because I literally do a feasibility study. I literally go out and see, is it feasible what I just promised? I need to see that even before I give them an estimate. I need to go out and just try it. That's risk management, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a project and like we're midway through it and it's just like, oh crap, I can't do that thing I promised you, but we're too far down the road now. I can't go back.
I mean, it's a very interesting process, because like you said, everybody should do risk management. Obviously, some people do it too much and they don't even get started, because you can it's kind of risky to start that new business, get that loan and keep it running, or you kind of break some rules and it's like, okay, you run a business without an LLC and you're just like accepting money. And, there's always a risk to something, and sometimes it's worth taking a risk to get a benefit and then become more efficient and sufficient with whatever you're running.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm it's a weird thing. For me, I was like, okay, I'm a very risky person, I would say, kind of sort of. I take a lot of risk on, and definitely. I'm just like, I should maybe take less risk on and become more like the cookie cutter Fitz with his distinct style, with the clear branding. My stance, for example, no branding. I'm like, I need branding if I want to appeal to a bigger market, and that's one of the things where I'm like, I need to lean into that. I need to learn about that. And that's why I thought I should evaluate my branding. And it's one of the things where I'm like, this is risky not doing. So I should do it, because obviously not doing it hurts me.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And it kind of connects us to brand, because you brought up brand a few times in this, is that So when I do a brand workshop, what I do at the very beginning of the brand workshop is I put this kind of bullseye kind of thing on the board, right?
Yeah.
And so the outer ring of that bullseye is what is it that you do? So in your case, let's say videography. That's what you do. Then the inner ring is how do you do it? Okay, that's kind of the next most important
so you're going
thing.
inwards.
You're going inward, and the bullseye is the most important part. So the out is what you do. That's like the least important thing is what you do. Even the middle
Least important.
least important. A lot of people think it's the most important. Every brand workshop I start, they're like, yeah, what I do. Let's make that the logo. Like I'm a lawn care company, put a lawnmower as the logo, and so that's the outer ring is what you do. That's the least important. The next most the next most important thing is how do you do it? How do you do it differently? How do you do this thing differently than the other people? But what's more important than even how you do it is why do you do this? Why are you in this? Tell me why are you even doing this? Like if you're just doing this to make money, you're not winning me over. Like why? Like you said before,
The
like
money bag with the camera.
money bag with a camera. That's the logo. But like but like what you said earlier, your first sentence, you were like, yeah, I don't have any personal branding. All I do is I want to help all my customers tell their story. That's the branding. That's the why. That's actually the most important damn thing of the whole thing. Like screw
You would
logos, screw
assume though
colors.
that you then get like more, but obviously you have to also communicate your why, and if you don't communicate your why, you'll end up where we land.
And a lot of people don't. Like how many? I mean, like go to Instagram even and find some of the best people making stuff and see how they communicate the why. And they don't. A lot of people don't. We live in this Instagram world where it's about flashy stuff. Wasn't that cool? Okay.
But
like
animated, and it's too clean, and yeah, it's not really relatable. Like you could spend like a ton of time in After Effects, and now you get a really highly polished, really cool graphic, and you're just like, I don't care. It's not.
I see
real.
it all the time. You see it all the time in music now, right? Where you get this like very polished music that's out there, and you just find yourself being like,
This is a
like
pop song.
yeah, and it's like someone that came from suburbia. They don't really have any story that's compelling. They're not saying anything. It's like really offensive or new. It's just like, and it's very polished sounding. And then you have like, you have like a rock band. You have like Queens of Stone Age or something. You have someone that's just grimy and just like, yeah, we're doing this crazy, like unperfect stuff. I'm more compelled by the imperfections, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I think, I would say in terms of the risk management part of this, I feel like it's also seeing the risk of being too polished, seeing the risk of being focused on the wrong things, So like for you, like if you were right now to like kind of walk in on your career, what's the biggest risk, would you say? Like right now, if you were to be risk management on yourself of your own company, what's the biggest risk?
So for me in the niche I am, like I'm getting replaced by cameras, basically by smartphones. They have free lenses. Everybody has them. It is a commodity nowadays. It's not a luxury anymore. Obviously, some people want to pay big bucks to stand out in a market where it's nearly impossible to stand out because the quality level is already up there with like everybody can see Netflix, see a production studio of like 50 million, 70 million. Everybody saw that quality. It's not anymore wow. Even if the quality like of the new Avengers is like tremendous, if the storyline kind of sucks, nobody really cares,
Yeah.
So, and the same thing is now with smartphones. Like, yeah, there's people posting with real cameras. The story just sucks and we don't care because it's too polished. And you immediately can tell the owner of that company, he just had money and he spent money on something where I don't care about. So I can just swipe and I already skip like a bad story because they did not put the time into a creative or interesting ad because they just spent money. And it's just like, oh yeah, best quality, no story, no creativeness. Because like, it's really hard to pay for creative stuff. So I'm just like, all the gear that I have is kind of a risk right now. If I would lean into it, I would just like completely sell everything and just buy more smartphones and just try to become more creative.
Yeah. So you're saying, so the risk that you've had is that you've put in you've put in a huge amount of money into, maybe not huge, but you put in a lot of money into equipment that may be irrelevant now. That's the risks. Which is
that
smart.
is one of the things. Like the other risk would be like, oh, I'm focusing on too many things. So I'm just like, should I shoot the dog and be like, I only do one thing now, and then which thing do I do? What do I like more? And I don't even know what I like.
So you've identified the risk. Well, let's analyze it now then. So what's the threat
Deep dive.
What's the threat? No, I think this is fun. So like, so if you do the
Yeah.
threat, like, so if you keep going down this road, let's say, what's the threat? Like, if you keep buying stuff and
Yeah, so right now all my stuff is paid for, so that is nice. So everything I bought, clients bought it, but obviously there's no retirement. That is the thing I'm missing out on. I'm basically
there's
running.
no end. Yeah, there's no goal.
So there's always something new coming out. It's basically called GAS, like gear acquisition syndrome. As a videographer, you're addicted to that. The next tool you buy makes your videos even better. And the more you buy, you have a super stabilized camera. You have like all the lights. Lighting is key, and you can go down that road and you always spend more money, but you don't reap a benefit. So right now I'm just like, okay, for my lens stand company, I bought everything to basically manufacture like resin pieces so that they glow in the dark and they are like, not anymore plastic, they're resin and becoming crystal-like. But obviously, if I would spend more money, I could buy more gear and make them more smooth, more perfect. Same with my video stuff, but I should run a profit first, But I currently am high risk, and I'm just like, okay, I need to figure something out that gives me a decent amount of money and is worth the risk. And till I find that, I basically run zero profit. So whatever money I get, I'm just survival and profit till I find the thing, and then I jump on towards.
Right. So it's almost
What is
sounds
a risky strategy to run, So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know a lot of videographers too that have GAS, that have the gear acquisition syndrome, and I feel like that is, I think that's almost like where we talked about SWOT, right? We have the strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats. It seems like with GAS, you're just in the opportunities. You're just like, there's so many opportunities. Why would I not go after all these opportunities? Which I think you're really great at. I think that's like one of your biggest strengths is that you actually are very quick, I feel like, to see opportunities and pivot towards those opportunities. And that is cool. But yeah, I think it's the seeing the threats part is part of it, which is cool. It sounds like you are seeing that. You are seeing that you've
yeah. So for me,
if you keep going down this road, it's a bad road to keep going down.
Yeah, so I compare myself to obviously other videographers, and they build their kit. I don't really have a kit. Like, I have multiple cameras where some videographers have one camera, have like a kit built around the camera. They rig it out, and they're like, we put in there the rails on it, so I could put the battery pack in the back. And the bigger it is, the more I can charge because clients see big camera, big money. And that's kind of how it works too. But if I have 3 cameras, I have more opportunities, and I can basically like, okay, I film 3 angles myself. Or if I have 4 cameras, I can do even that and get different like live streams, for example. And I'm like, I'm more opportunity based with my kit building because like I still spend the money, but it's like, oh, now I have the capability of 360 videography. Then I spend time on like Blender where I can generate like artificial 360 worlds and can animate videos with that, where other people just like focus on that one thing and become really good at that. And I'm just like, am I too universal? Yeah, you see what I mean?
Maybe not. I mean, because it sounds like, and I may just be speaking off the cuff here, is that maybe you're in the wrong role. Maybe you're not. Maybe you shouldn't be a videographer. Maybe you need to be more of a creative director, project manager, right? Because if you know a little bit about everything, then you'll know enough at least to subcontract then and just have your video guy and have your 360 guy, your VR guy. Because you know enough to at least talk their language then, which is cool. So I think there's something there too where like that's a cool opportunity to think about too in all of this. But to kind of get back kind of more centered on your gear, and if you keep buying gear and stuff, I think you're right. I think it's just like your talk earlier about trends and things like that. If you start to chase gear, chase trends, and you chase perfect, I think that's the thing too, is a lot of people, especially creatives, they have this very high bar that they want to achieve with their work, which is cool. However, like they let good be the enemy of perfect. Creating a good video is just fine, and the client won't know perfect from good. But if you in your head you're like, yeah, but if I had that stabilization, if I had that one little tool, it would just be perfect. It's like, yeah, maybe, but what's the percentage points of how important that is, right? Like you made a video, it's a 92%, and sure, if you spend another 3,000, it'd be 94% good. Yeah. I mean, like, just it's good. Move on, Yeah,
it's kind of like the whole TikTok things, like you film a TikTok and it's low quality, and then you see a high quality ad of a car. They have to pay to have that thing viewed. Where like a creative video is like, okay, I put that up there and everybody wants to view it for free. So it's like, it's a really weird
And
world
concept,
we
it's
live.
all concept, right? Like, so
Yeah,
if you're
and
gonna,
it seems like nowadays, like the better your idea and your vision is, the more views you get, and technology doesn't really not matter anymore. So I'm like,
you know, yeah, and I think sorry, this just kind of blew up my mind a little bit. I think maybe this next episode we'll talk about this, or one of the next episodes. But what's interesting is for all the time people put into gear and learning new gear and doing tutorials on software and learning all of these things that are outside of ourselves, how much time do creatives really put into actually coming up with new ideas, right? Do you sit in front of a piece of paper, get a word generator, and then where it says like coffee cup and dolphin, and then you have 10 minutes to come up with 100 ideas about that? Like, why don't we do that? Like, that's where the value is, right? It's the concept. And if you're just good at coming up with cool concepts, who even needs the gear?
yeah,
Right?
Because that is the thing. Like, there's actually a big YouTuber. He's called Mr. Beast, and all he does is like basically is like crazy idea makes a crazy idea happen. And because he is like at a stage where it's like he made millions and basically he always reinvests and he always comes up with crazy ideas. They became to a level that they are like not really easy copyable. So you cannot copy him because you don't have the same amount of money. Like, oh, I gave an island away. Oh, I gave away 100K, and it all started with like giving his first sponsor money away. Basically, he gave 10 grand to a homeless guy, and it got an insane amount of views because like he did what? Nobody would do that, But he comes up every morning apparently with like crazy ideas, and he talks to other people to learn something new, to get new ideas. And it seems like we're in an idea-based world where, oh, you get a crazy idea for AI for a crazy photo. It will get a lot of views if it's a good idea, kind of, sort of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And he's very big about Mr. Beast is very good. He runs a very good company of constantly doing things. So it's not like when he did his Squid Games video, which I think is still his top video, with something like 100 million views or some crazy amount,
130 million or more,
something insane like that. While he was doing that, he was recording 4 other videos at the same exact time. So he's churning them out. He's to that point now where he's like, I have a cool idea, run with it, go. I have a cool idea, run with it, go. He's in that beautiful place where he can lose a lot of money and he'll still be okay. So he can kind of just keep playing and putting out a lot of ideas. But you're right. Is his videos, like, for how much money he makes? How polished are his videos? They're not even that polished, really, comparatively. No. They're not
so
like.
So they're highly polished for watch time, but quality wise, he specifically does not use like high quality cameras because they look too polished, because it would look like Squid Game, and Squid Game is only good because the idea is good. You know what I mean? And the idea is like, oh yeah, people fighting for money for their survival, and they're basically getting killed and don't know what they sign up for. That's Squid Game, And, and people was making fun of him because he's donating money and he basically fit the perfect bill. What is a great idea? So it's all ideas.
So it is. It's like concept is king. I know you've heard that before, but concept is the king. I mean, it truly is. So I mean, it's like, so I think it's funny, like that, while we're able to invest all this time and money into the gear and into these apps and stuff, even to kind of build it back to like, all of these tools being bought and acquired by bigger companies, and then we have to learn these things. It all comes back to, can you generate creative ideas? And like, I think we should all, including myself, we should all take more time daily to like work that muscle out, right? And if there's something out there that we'd have to pay to do that, that may be worth the money too. If there's something out there that helps you get better at being creative, because that is the case, right? It's just like, can we come up with the next cool, weird idea? That's more important than how good you can shoot something. It just is.
So I see that a lot in like music videos, for example. There's like people doing like the typical hip hop music video, like you get a shot down and then there's like it's in the ghetto and it's not really creative. It's all like guns into a thing and it's like it's terrible. It's not really creative. And I feel like if you have a good creative music video that tells a really interesting story, you will just watch the music video because you want to know that story. And if the song is a banger, you would go so viral, it's not funny.
Well, yeah, and I mean, to keep it in the hip hop world, let's take someone that's new that's done that well, right? I'm
curious. I have a list with like good music videos.
Like how about this? Like Tyler the Creator. He's a great example of like he was like, I'm going to do a lot of things that are not cool in the hip hop world. One of them's coming out and saying he's gay, and just like coming out and like putting it in all of his songs that he's like totally gay, and like that was not cool, but like. in
now
that world.
It kind of is, though.
But now it is. Now that he's done it, because it's like this whole, because he saw the opportunities, right? So it goes back to that risk management, right? Where a lot of rappers, if there probably is rappers out there that are gay that were like, oh, I can't come out, bro. That's not hard. That's such a threat if I come out. Where he was like, actually, that's an opportunity, right? There's like a whole vacuum of people not doing this, and he's a good example of, like, while he says some pretty raw stuff in his songs, sometimes it's just the goofiest song in the world. Sometimes it's the goofiest music video. He'll be in like some like a sunflower patch and stuff like that. So it's like, Lil Nas X is another example of like, like him just like doing weird stuff that's not the usual. And it's only benefited him. Outkast is an example of when we were growing up. Like, that's such a weird example of like, oh, we're gonna do all this weird stuff, and how well did that work for them?
There's a song called "Save That Money" from Lil Dicky, and the whole concept is basically he's making a music video about how to save money. And it's a rap song, obviously. And he goes into rich neighborhoods and is like, hey, can I come in here in the villa and basically shoot a music video for free? Can I be on your yard for free? Can I be in your club for free and make a music video? And basically the whole music video is filmed for free in those clubs. And all they get is a shout out on the end. And it's like a super creative music video. And I'm just like, he did what? He's rapping about saving money and how he's like sharing like a coffee with his girl and whatever. And it's like super hilarious. And it's like, yeah,
and it's that, and I think anyone that starts to do that, they get kind of rewarded. You get rewarded for going outside of the lane. I mean, I think at the very beginning, people will tell you, don't do that. That's not the good, they're focused on the threats. But I think, that's where the risk and management comes in. The risk management's not telling you to be obsessed about risk. It's about you being like, yeah, I understand the risk, but I'm going to do this anyway. Like, I see the opportunities outweigh the risk. And we could all do that. Like, I could take a hard left turn right now and start doing something, I'm sure, that right now is like, that would seem illogical, but if I did it, would benefit me huge amounts. We've all had to do that as creatives. We've all had to do that, right? We've all had our parents, our friends be like, nah, man, you need to go sell insurance. We're making $25 an hour over there selling insurance. Why don't you do that? And we've all each had to say no and be like, no, because I want to create stuff, because we have to see the opportunities, right? Because if you're obsessed with risk, then you shouldn't even be in this career. It's a risky career. If you want that safe career, there's plenty of careers out there where there is no risk. Yeah. So risk management's not about being obsessed with the risk, but it's something to definitely do. Always like be very wary of the risks, and then also seeing the risks and doing the things the same. I think that's the biggest thing is that there is risks in doing the same thing over and over and over and over again.
True. On that note, now I'm highly inspired to do like some concepts and creative idea brainstorming, because like I think like actually after just talking about it, it makes a lot of sense, because like we all know the answers to our problems, and it's all like common sense usually, but it's like somebody sometimes needs to point certain things out, because like it's
that's why we have
logical.
Each other, right? That's why we have each other. That's why I love this podcast, bro. Because we can sit here, we can call each other out, we can bring it up, we can
Yeah. By the way, I want to call your background out with the purple blue light. We dig it.
We dig it. Yeah, we're getting on brand over here, right? And your feedback, right? Every time we stop these podcasts, we get off camera and we talk about what can be better. What are the risks? What are the opportunities? So I think that's the best thing too, is like, just talk to other people, get it out from outside of yourself, talk about the risks with other people, because they open your eyes, man. I mean, you've opened my eyes to a few things that I get kind of stuck under, and you're like, no, man, don't worry about that. And like, it's so helpful.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more brute force and just doing things, what is kind of bad and good at the same time, but I'm aware of it. That's the only good thing I can say about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm more of the, let's be structured, let's have a plan, but I'm also aware that means that like, we could never get it done. We'll never do it sometimes because I'm too scared to. So, yeah.
On that note, obviously we had a little hurricane happening, and Hurricane Ian came by and was like saying hello. So that was also in the risk management world. We were like deciding, do we have to move? Do we not have to move?
Yeah,
and we had risk zones. There was Zone A, Zone B, Zone Z, up till D or whatever. And we basically decided to stay. What was kind of a risky move after seeing the images of Fort Myers, and I'm like, we got lucky that it didn't hit us, but we were in the safe zone. So Where
Yeah,
are
it's interesting,
tourists?
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because so for anyone that doesn't know, I should say. So Saint Petersburg is this peninsula that kind of juts out over Tampa Bay, and so if Hurricane Ian was going to make a direct hit, which they were saying, it was going to pass right over this peninsula before it got to Tampa, and
It shifted.
yeah, and thank God it shifted, but. Yeah, you think of this; it's just a peninsula in this huge body of water. Like you would think of this huge hurricane. It's like, yeah, it could have been bad, but you guys are in the center of the peninsula. So when you guys not leaving, I'm like, okay, if there's any place in this, you guys are kind of in the highest part of the peninsula, which is like what 10 feet away from, off the water, but
60 actually.
60. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. But so for you guys, yeah, it's interesting though, right? You had to do that risk management of like, should we go? If we don't go, here's the risks.
Yeah.
If we do go, here's the risk, because there is risks of going too. If you guys would have driven, you would have maybe driven right into you'd have driven right into the hurricane maybe.
I would say it's like a risk of 4 days, or 4 days being affected by like cleaning up, traveling, and spending probably also like hotels and whatever. That would go easily into $1,000 just for like going away, because like you have to buy gas, you have to travel, and you lose out on opportunities because you're not down here. So it's like, it's really weird. Like there is a price to everything. Like you're not working is money being spent.
Yeah, and yet again, and hurricane's an interesting example because the path is always changing. So it's a cool example of real life too, right? Where the risk doesn't stay on this perfect straight line either. So you guys could have left St. Pete and driven right in the hurricane that like changed paths, you know? So you could have actually put yourself in worse risk by reacting to the risk, which is an interesting thing too.
Yeah, and in the end, nobody really knows, and it's a weird time, so we got lucky.
Yeah, we live in a very risky world, right? So we all need to be good at risk management, right? I mean, in every situation, and it's sad to say, in situations that didn't used to be risky, when you send your kids the first day of school or first grade, there's risk management there now. So it's
And there's
something that
homeschooling too, like if you do the homeschooling, trying to avoid that risk. Now you have the risk of like being non-social, not having enough friends. You don't know what that means long term, because there's no real studies, for all of that. Like what happens to a person staying at home, not playing with other kids in the,
Yeah, I mean, even as a driving instructor, when I was a driving instructor, when we would get kids that came in riding in the back seat, and you could tell that they were homeschooled, you could just tell. Those kids I felt for when they would get in behind that driving wheel. You would think I threw them in front of the wheel of a spacecraft or something. Where the kids that played in sports and like were on the playgrounds or in public schools, they jumped behind the steering wheel and did great. They were like whatever. So you're right. There's always a risk, right? There's always some payoff or always some penalty for doing and not doing stuff. So it's just being aware of it. I think it's always just identifying, analyzing, changing what you can, and then just repeating that, and not getting caught in it. I think that's the biggest thing too, is just don't get stuck in the risk. There's a lot of things too when they're equal like this, when it's like 50-50, then just get over it and move on. Like that's what I do in my life. When it's like, dang, there really is exact amount of pros and exact amount of cons, I just say, okay, well then make the decision, move on.
So here's an interesting thing. So there's a new anime coming out, and it was like, it's called Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever. And that is an old PC game that came out 2 years ago. It was really cool concept, really cool art style. And I'm like, we watched it, because I don't barely watch anything, but I like to spend the time with my girl. And I'm like, now I watched it. Now I want to play the video game. I'm like, should I play the video game? Is it a risk? Yes, it is a risk. I spent the time. But now I'm getting inspired with like 360 stuff, the VR stuff, because so in the video game there's VR in the VR, so you put on classes. And now I figured out how to put like that game into VR, so it's like a weird inception. I'm like, is it worth the risk of enjoying myself, or is it not? So,
well, yeah. I mean, your time is worth stuff. I mean, if we're gonna get into that, it's a
never-ending story.
Yeah, I mean, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, I got a shout out. It's a great show. Cyberpunk 2077 is becoming a pretty good game as well. It's what's cool about that is it's really just the world building. It's what I like. I like these things too. I do tell myself is like it does help to kind of sponge up all this stuff. So things like cyberpunk, the aesthetic, what they're doing, it is good for you because you are studying. Everything you're doing, you're studying.
You an experience in life, kind of,
Exactly. So you can use that stuff. That stuff does appear in other places, even if you don't even realize it. So so the risk of getting back in the game is like, yeah, you could spend, but then yet again, if you see the risk, you can still do it, but then maybe you set an hour timer when you play. You're like, okay, cool, here's a 1 hour timer on my phone because I know the risk is I waste a lot of time on this.
The organized and structured Sean telling me my unstructured way. You're right with that, because like my problem is like I don't want to do Netflix, for example, because like you get stuck in this binge watching and you spend too much time, and obviously the benefit is like you can talk about stuff, you get inspired by stuff, and you're being part of society. You watch what everybody else is watching and you can be part of that community and you can talk about it. And my problem usually is like I don't do that. I'm very niche in like let's do only YouTube videography and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I mean, you used Mr. Beast earlier as an example. When he was younger, when he was a kid, before YouTube was even cool, he just watched YouTube videos all the time. Yeah. He doesn't even know, in any interviews with Mr. Beast, people bring up movies and video games and stuff, and he's like, I've never watched them. Even well-known movies he's never watched, because he's like, I only have ever watched YouTube videos, because he's fully dedicated himself. Even before, yet again, before YouTube was cool. Everyone was like, there wasn't people being paid on YouTube, and he was still the guy that was sitting there studying it. So yeah, you're right though. There's always a risk with your time, and that's something that I need to get better with too, of just like, yeah, don't waste your time on anything. But yeah, yet again though, it's like seeing that risk and then just, you can, use tools, just use tools. We live in a time of infinite tools, so we might as well use them.
Yeah. And it really seems like nowadays you can consume more because it's all about the ideas, and the more good ideas you consume, the more good ideas you become or get, you know what I mean? So I'm just like, maybe I'm just trying to find excuses to consume more of my favorite animes, games, whatever, So it's like a really weird edge to walk.
Well, it's true, because it does put you away in this box maybe but then what's the alternative? Do I tell you to start watching Pride and Prejudice and a bunch of other stuff that you never would watch? Should you go, watch Little Woman or something so you can get a more, because you're not going to be able to. So it's okay. That comes back to that niche, right? You're your own niche. You're your own person, right? And so, but you're right. It's that risk management of everything you do, but yeah, not being obsessed about it, but definitely being aware of it. So. Yeah. But yeah, man, we're at an hour and 16 minutes, so I think we wrap this up. Wait, we don't give those people some risk about their time being wasted. You know what I mean?
I mean, they probably watch it in the car and have nothing better to do, and also there is nothing better to do. But that is obviously clear facts right now.
Yeah, nothing better to do than watch this podcast, because this is the best thing out there, the best content out there. I can
cream
guarantee
de la cream.
The cream
not the bottom of.
A German trying to say French in English is probably the funniest thing I've ever heard. The cream de la cream, right?
Basically.
Well, thank you as always, my friend. It's fun as always. I think I do want to shout out yet again here in a few more episodes. I know these kind of come out a little bit after the fact. We'll be doing our first live show. There's also talks of other fun things like Patreons and stuff. So we're excited to share a lot with you guys out there.
Money.
But if you're, the best thing you can do is please like these videos, comment, please put them anywhere. We're always in the need of people like you that are watching to just help empower us, and we'll keep giving you good stuff. You just keep giving us good stuff.
Also on that note, like we're just like giving you guys ideas and concepts, and it's all about ideas and concepts. So get inspired and have a good day.
Get inspired. I'll see you guys soon, and be creative.